Good. Steve, thank you so much. This is the last lecture. I have to start by disabusing you of a misimpression that you got from Barry's and Bob's talk. Both of those guys showed these pictures of sweet little kids at the ends of their talk. And I'm sure some of you think that a requirement for retirement is that you be a grandfather. Some of you are already thinking, wow, I checked, it's not, by the way, are thinking, wow, they give up a tenured position for babies? I hope Killeen, I'm sure you're saying, is made of sterner stuff than that. I am. I promise you. Amongst other things, there will be no pictures of babies at the end of this lecture. No attempts to elicit paleocortical effusions of gratuitous oxytocin. Okay. No delay of reinforcement at all. Now, I want to assure you that these beautiful children have nothing at all to do with my intention to retire. In fact, even as we speak, I'm working on some papers with Leah.
What papers, Peter?
What was that, Federico?
What papers are you writing with her?
Funny papers. Well, at high cost, I was able, since some of you don't know about the Royal Road, at high cost I was able to procure a copy of an old chart of the Royal Road from a guy named Harrison Ford. I want to lay it out for you here. Okay. It was a road constructed in the 5th century by Darius I to unite his diverse kingdom. And on it, mounted couriers could go in 8 days what it would take 100 days on foot. Herodotus said of it, there's nothing faster than these Persian couriers. Neither snow, nor heat, nor rain, nor darkness of night deters these speedy couriers from their appointed rounds. It's where it was first, folks. Well, a few years after Darius built the Royal Road, a buddy of Alexander the Great, a student of Aristotle, Ptolemy the First, inherited Egypt from Alexander, and along with it he inherited Euclid. Euclid was a great geometer, wrote the elements of geometry, and Ptolemy supported him. But he complained to him. He said, Ptolemy, it seems to me that I can't master this book. Is there no easier way to come to learn geometry? Upon which Euclid famously replied, Sire, there is no royal road to geometry. Millennia later, C.S. Peirce said, there's no royal road to logic. Any results worth having must be paid for by the price of close attention. Well, what I'm going to do today is tell you about my royal road to knowledge and take you along it with me. Bob gave reasons for retirement. Mine, I've been around a long time. I was born the day the Allies invaded North Africa and forced Rommel to retreat in the night. It's time for me to retreat, leave room for new people with new ideas to take the business. I started my journey at Michigan State, where I admired the work of Smitty Stevens and Fred Skinner, George Miller. Went to Harvard to study with them, hung on by my fingernails, and hung around until I heard about this job opportunity in Tempe, Arizona. So I went to one of my advisors, Dick Hernstein, and I said, well, what do you think? And he gave me the only 2 bits of advice I ever remember getting from him. One of them was true. I don't know about the other one. You'll have to decide. He said, Peter, don't call it Temp. It's Tempe. And then he said, and don't go there. It'll dry out your brain. I don't know. I submitted a thin dissertation. Mary and I packed our cat and other stuff in a van and hit that long and wonderful west to what was then called Fort Skinner in the Desert, our psychology department. No sooner had I arrived than the walls of the fort were breached the barbarians came in, and all of the behaviors but I beat a hasty retreat into the night. So I was left with a great inheritance. I inherited a bunch of equipment, a bunch of smart graduate students, and a course taught by Fred Keller called Personalized System of Instruction, one of the first collaborative learning projects that worked. Hundreds of students took Rat Lab, mastered the content, and what made it really work were the phenomenal TAs and RAs that we had in that class. People like Greg Neidard's enthusiasm infused the class, kept it functioning, kept it organized. He was such an organized RA that he today confronted me with ditto. Many of you guys don't know what ditto is. One of our dittoed exams in the class. And, would you hold them up, please? Our lab manual and our course book. Thanks for your enthusiasm. And that course also exposed me to some peculiar undergraduates. Students like Richard Katz, who suggested, Peter, you know, it might be that your overly intellectualized, rationalized framework in the world might not be the only window through which to view the world. He was right. I prefer it, but there are others, and I've always kept that lesson. Thank you, Richard. So those were good years. I had a well-organized class. I had great graduate students. I had equipment. I just had to figure out where to go with all of those goodies. I even had a title. I was an assistant professor of psychology. The time at ASU can be broken down into 3 epochs, which loosely correspond to assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor. Although, as Keith knows, there's really no such rank as full professor, right, Keith? Right. There's professor. And when somebody calls himself a full professor, he wants to make it clear to you that he's not an associate professor because they're only half full. Or an assistant professor, but they're running on empty. So these epochs in my career started, you can't be respected as a scientist unless you master data. And so I first had to earn my spurs by empirics. For me then, data came first. Theory's job was to clean them up and make sense of them for us. You collect data and then you worry about what they mean. So I went through that phase, and having earned my spurs, I realized you can't just walk around in spurs unless you use them to spur something. You know? So I had to look around and find something to spur. And it wasn't too hard. There were other flabby theories and data sets around that I could work on. I came to recognize the truth in Darwin's great lines. He was a naturalist, observer, well before a theoretician. And his lines were, how odd it is that anyone cannot see that observations must be for or against a view if they are to be of any service at all. I enjoyed that epoch in my career, and then I had a vision, an apparition. Now you can have these apparitions on the road to Tarsus, or you can have them under the Ohio State University football stands. And the apparition was simply this. Why those spurs? Why those data? Why that theory? What's important? Why does it matter? How do you choose a problem? What is worth doing? Now the answer to that comes easily to a graduate student, because the one question that they must ask and answer is, how do I survive? I was able to survive grad school not because I could do exams, which Skinner knows I was never very good at, because of something Dick Feynman once said. So I had to find a question that they thought interesting enough it would take their minds off my stupid answers to their stupid comprehensive examination questions. And I'm going to tell you about it in painful detail because it characterizes my modus operandi in most of my subsequent years.